Wow, I still can't believe I own this car. You know, every time I come out to my garage, I still can't believe that I've got this in my garage. It's a 2021 C8 Corvette, and I've had this car for 2 years now. And in today's video, I'll just go over the things that I've disliked about the car, things that I like, the modifications that I've done, and the modifications that I'm planning to do on this amazing car. So let's get right to it. So first things first, it's a 2LT, and it's got the red interior. So I know I wanted the black with the red interior, and the 2LT is really nicely optioned. The best part of the 2LT, I believe, would be the digital review camera. Otherwise, this car has some massive blind spots. Ventilated seats, which is nice to have, but honestly I hardly ever use it. The extra nice quality on the interior is good to have, but to me it's not a necessity. I could have lived without it, and I could have also lived without the upgraded sound system as well. Another nice feature of the 2LT is the folding side mirrors. For me, it kind of helps me when I back up the car into my garage. So if I could go back and purchase this car again, I think I'd probably go with a 1LT. Overall, I think it's been a great car. Definitely enjoying it. So I think what I'll do is start with the modifications that I've done to this car. So the biggest, most expensive, most notable difference I've made to the car is these new wheels. I never liked the factory wheels that comes with the C8. I don't like how they look, and I don't like how the factory wheels tuck in so much inside the fenders. And so literally within weeks of getting the car, I bought these wheels here, and I'll go over the specs of these wheels here. But you can see how these sit almost flush with the quarter panel. And that's the way it should be. So this tire sticks out, or I should say this wheel, the tire is stock. So all I did is just replace the factory wheel with this Avante Garde wheel. The tires, front and back, are stock. So just by swapping the rims, you get this effect where it's flush. And so these rims has a more aggressive offset than factory. So I believe on the back, these are offset by an initial 24 millimeters. So these wheels stick out an inch more than factory. And on the front, they stick out 22 millimeters more than factory. So almost an inch. And on the front, they're pretty much perfectly lined up with the fender. And that's the look that I want. So it gives it a much nicer stance. Let me look at it from an angle. Like, to me, that's the way this car should have looked from the factory. I mean, you're paying a lot of money for this high performance car, and I feel like the factory wheels was a big letdown. And I resolved it by getting these wheels here. So these wheels are from Avante Garde. The model is a 520R in a gloss black. I did a detailed video about these wheels, so you can check that out. It's got 20 by 11 in the rear, and I believe it's 19 by 8.5 in the front. So it does have that staggered look. The offset is perfect. Quality is really good. Overall, extremely happy with the look of these wheels, and I think it complements the car perfectly. Almost looks like it came from the factory with these wheels. So I think the best upgrade you can do on a C8 Stingray is upgrade the wheels. Okay, next modification is the spoiler. This spoiler is from a company called Competition Carbon, based out of California, and they do some amazing work with C8 Corvettes. They've got this I think they've got probably the best wide body kit for the C8 Stingray, so you should definitely check it out. And so I purchased it from them directly actually before it just came out to the market. And because I was one of the first to buy the spoiler, I did pay a premium for it. It was about $1,500. Going back, I'd still get a spoiler this style, but I probably wouldn't pay that much because now there's aftermarket spoilers that have the similar style that are much less. For example, I believe Paragon has a duckbill spoiler. It's very similar to this, which comes in either a carbon fiber or in my case, I had this painted to match the car, which is a carbon flash. If I were to get another Stingray, I would do these two mods all over again. So the wheels and the spoiler, I think, really sets this car apart from the other Stingrays that I see. Very few C8 Stingrays are in black. And so the black with the red interior to me kind of really stands out and really gives it that kind of sporty, exotic car look. So yeah, if I were to go back, I'd still get the black with the red interior. So here's another view of the interior. Let's go inside. Oh, by the way, I did get this recently and I actually really like this. So this is just to protect my door because as you can see, I don't have a whole lot of space. It's a triple garage and space is a little tight. So this product comes in really handy. So if you ever do find yourself parked in a spot and you don't have much room to get in, like here it's not too bad. I can probably get in quite easily from here, but let's just say you don't have much space and your door is more like this. I actually found a really convenient feature with the C8 Corvette that I discovered about a year ago, which I posted on a video actually. And so what you can easily do is roll down these windows automatically. And then it's a lot easier to get into the car this way. So I kind of wish I knew this feature earlier. But stepping inside. All right. Stepping inside to the C8 Corvette. Very nice, clean interior. I actually like this wall of buttons. I really like it. It kind of gives you that feeling that you're in a cockpit. And the rumor is that this will be gone with the 2025 refresh. For a first-time owner, it takes a while to figure out where things are. And last thing you want to do is try to look for these buttons while you're driving. So after some time, you get to realize you know where things are by how they feel. So I just know that in the middle, there's this toggle switch, and right below is the power button. So when I'm driving, I just feel for the switch, and then I know right underneath is the power button. And the others, you just get to know by feel where they are. Like I said, this mirror, it's digital. I don't know why more cars don't have this feature, because I think it's one of the best safety features you can have, especially in a car where you have really bad blind spots. Great safety feature. Best feature of the 2LT by far is this camera. And I mentioned you've got the blind spot monitoring system, which is really good to have. I honestly don't rely on it that much. I rely a lot on the camera and just a quick, shoulder check. So I really don't pay attention to that much. That's why I'm saying that 2LT it's nice to have, but in my opinion, I don't think it's really worth it. I'd rather put that money towards something else. So this doesn't have the Z51 package. I didn't want the Z51 package because I never will ever track this car, and you're paying for things that are extra that you don't need, and it's going to sacrifice the ride quality because the car will ride a bit stiffer, and the intent of this car is to be more of a comfortable daily cruiser. So that's why I didn't get the Z51 package. But overall, I really like the interior and really like this car. So let's just step outside and take another look at the outside. If there's any other modifications that I would do to this car, I've got a couple ideas. One, now this may be kind of controversial, but I am thinking of getting some aftermarket round tail lights. Now I mentioned Competition Carbon built this duck-bill spoiler, and they're coming out with a dual round tail light for the C8 Corvette that replaces this entire housing. And you can get that in either carbon fiber or carbon flash. And so far, to me, it looks pretty cool. It looks amazing. I'll show some pictures on the video so you guys can see. I'm not a big fan of these Camaro-like tail lights. So if you've got the two round tail lights, I think that would look killer, in my opinion. I think that's going to look awesome. So that's probably one modification I'm looking to do. And I think Corvettes should have round tail lights. The other modification that I'm planning to do is upgrade this exhaust system. So this is a factory system. It's okay. I mean, it's pretty loud on startup, but after that it gets pretty quiet. And just driving around cruising, it's pretty quiet exhaust. I didn't get the performance exhaust from the factory. That was a $1,500 option, and I chose not to get it because I felt that didn't make a whole lot of difference in terms of sound and performance. And it's also a very heavy exhaust system, so the systems that I'm looking for are going to be much louder. It's going to look nicer with the round tips. I'll probably go with, I think, the black tips instead of steel. And they're much lighter, so you'll save probably a good 40 pounds just by swapping the exhaust system. So that's one thing I'll probably do over the winter, which is coming up very shortly. So this car will likely go into storage. Just the stance of this car with those wheels looks really cool, like looks really nice. And you got that big spoiler in the back. And just the black with the red really pops. I'm just really surprised why you don't see a lot of black C8s out there. It's not a very popular color for the C8. So in the 2 years that I've had this car, I put on 21,000 kilometers. And in those 21,000 kilometers, I haven't had any warranty work done to the car, just maintenance. All I've done so far is 3 oil changes. So I've changed the oil at 9,000 kilometers, then 14,000 kilometers, and in the spring of this year I changed the oil at 19,000 kilometers. So that was early March. Now it's October and I've got 21,000 kilometers on the odometer, so only 2,000 kilometers driven, pretty much this summer season. And it's not a car that I drive that often anymore. I just don't have the time. And when I do go out, we take out the Hellcats, so I don't really use this car that much. The only time I really get to use this car, it seems like, for coffee runs or going to and from school to pick up my kids. In the 2 years that I've had this car, no problems, no need to go to the dealership for anything, no check engine lights, no weird noise, no smoke, no leaks, like nothing. It's been absolutely perfect. Just the 3 oil changes and that's it. One of the things that has really surprised me by owning this car is just the amount of attention that this car gets every time I go out. Even more so when I first picked up the car back in 2021. The Corvette was fairly new. Not a lot of people knew what this car was, so I remember there was a lot of times people would just come up to me and just ask me, like, what is that car? Because they've never seen it before. And so they're really curious to know more about the car. And I always enjoyed, showing the car to people and explaining to them what it is. And I'm very, proud to say that it's a Corvette. And, this car came out in 2020, and still 3 years later, you still get a lot of people, turning heads, pointing, and say, hey, what is that? Or nice car. Like I would say it's maybe not as much as, you know, when I first got the car, but still, every time I go out, I still do get a lot of attention. I get people, you know, taking photos, saying, hey, nice car, asking me to rev it when I drive by. So it does still get a lot of attention, a lot of thumbs up. Okay, some of the things I don't like. This trunk is rather nice. However, it's much smaller than the previous generation Corvettes, like the C6 and C7, where you have a big hatch. So you do have less storage. And the other thing I don't like about this trunk space is that it gets pretty hot back here. So I avoid putting groceries back here. And so that's the one thing you gotta consider. Whatever you're transporting, it does get pretty hot back there. I still have the factory floor mats, which are actually really nice because it looks like they come in a red stitching to match the car. But when I ordered this car, I ordered the rubber floor mats because I just find those are easier to keep clean, and I just kept this here for the future owner. All right, so let's move to the front. I'll show you one thing I don't like about the front. So the only complaint I have about the front trunk is that it's hard to close. It's really difficult to close this at one time because sometimes you don't put enough pressure. So you gotta do it like that. You gotta give it some force. But the problem with that is then you leave finger marks everywhere. So to close, it's kind of a two-step process. I find the easiest way is to first close so you hear a click, like that, then push down. To me, that's the easiest way to close it, but you get fingerprints on the front hood every single time. But the storage space is really nice. And with the 2LT, you get this cargo net, which comes in really handy for putting in spare parts. So I put in my trickle charger in here. I've got a little mesh bag for like microfiber cloths and a little pouch here for some tools. So it's very deep, which I like, and so you can fit quite a bit in this trunk. So here's a trickle charger that I mentioned. It's a Porsche trickle charger, and so I would plug this over here and then plug this to my wall outlet. And the reason why I have this microfiber cloth here is just to lay it down like this so that the cord doesn't touch the paint. And one of the things I noticed about this car that I don't really like is the fact that this car, the battery drains very quickly. So during the winter time, if this car sits in this garage, which is unheated, it gets cold here. If this car sits here for about 2 weeks and I go to start the car, it has a hard time trying to start. Like the battery to me just seems to drain too fast. Whereas with my Porsche, I can leave it outside for weeks at a time. I've had it outside for over a month one time during winter and it would start up no problem. But with this car, I have to keep it trickle charged during the winter if it's going to sit for more than 2 weeks. Then, because otherwise I would just have a hard time starting the car. Another negative on this car is it's almost impossible to keep this engine bay clean just because it's so exposed to the elements. So you've got these vents here, and when it rains, you know, the water just goes into the engine bay and there's nothing you can really do about it. This seat belt will never ever stay where it's supposed to be. So if you do get the 3LT, I believe this would have a strap to hold that in. But I find it's really annoying because this always somehow just pops out and you always got to put it back in. This car really has no sign of wear and tear. Like these seats still look like new to me. They look really good. The only place where I could see some wear is at the bottom of the door, where like my shoe kind of hits the bottom. You can see over here, it's a bit of a scratch right there. And that's just from my shoes rubbing. And because I park it in this garage and I don't have the ability to open the doors all the way, it's inevitable. I can't really avoid it. So I pay a lot of attention just coming in and out of the car. But that's the only place where I see some wear. Everywhere else, like the steering wheel, everything else still looks like new. One of the things I've noticed with this gas cap is when you lock the car, it also locks your gas cap. So what happened one time is this gas cap to me kind of looked like this, like it was sticking out, and the car was locked, and I was trying to like get it out because I couldn't lock it. It was kind of stuck like this, and I thought maybe it just malfunctioned, so I couldn't open the gas cap. And I didn't realize by having the car locked, it also locks this as well. So that's a good feature, that this locks with the doors. The only quality issue I have with the car is with the interior, and specifically with this removable roof. So I'll show you what I mean. Alright, so removing the roof is pretty straightforward. Most of the time when I go to remove this roof, this piece here usually pops out. So this piece, it didn't come out this time, but it's just a rubber grommet, and it usually comes out on both sides. So it gets kind of annoying because it could easily just pop out, land on the ground, and you might not even notice it until you go back to put your roof back in place. So maybe one fix could be maybe put some silicone or some glue in there to make sure this doesn't come out. But I've noticed on both sides that these do have a tendency to just pull out when you're removing the roof. Or maybe I'm just not removing it properly. But this roof, same as my old C6, it's the same pretty much locking mechanism. So I don't think it's me. Okay, guys, I'm trying to find things to complain about this car, and I'm not doing a good job because there really isn't a whole lot to really complain about this car. I mean, what's not to like? Like, it looks amazing, it drives awesome, it's luxurious, it's quick. 0-60 is advertised at 2.9, so I think I got a 3.2 first few times I launched this car. You know, I don't want to beat on the car. I like to take care of the car. So I don't do any burnouts. I don't really do any hard launches, and I certainly don't do any donuts with this car. So nothing crazy. I drive it pretty sensibly, if you can believe that. So the performance is great. The fuel mileage is pretty good too. It looks fantastic. I feel like it's a really good, reliable car. It's reasonably priced. There isn't a whole lot to really dislike about the car. I think if you're privileged enough to own one, you're gonna love it. And my intention with getting this car was to keep it for a long time. Maybe, you know, one day my kids could, you know, drive it too. So that was my long-term plan. But, you know, things change, priorities change. I kind of alluded to the fact that, you know, I might sell this car, and there's a possibility I might sell this car. Maybe not get something to replace this right away, but maybe get something else. So I'm kind of thinking of maybe a new truck, but eventually I do want a sports car. And if you've watched my other videos, you'll know that the biggest complaint about C8 Corvette is the lack of a manual, and the Stingray in particular just needs to be a little bit louder and needs more power. And so if I were to replace this car, you know, I maybe get a more powerful version of a C8. I'm actually thinking of maybe putting a deposit on a ZR1 when that comes out. So I already talked to a local dealership. So I may purchase another C8, but if I do, it's gonna have to address the fact that I feel like this car is a little underpowered. It needs more power. It needs more noise. And that's one of the reasons why I love and adore my Hellcat, because it's powerful and loud. And I just wish this car was a bit more like that. It's just too civilized and luxurious of a car for me, if that makes any sense. I like the car, I like my sports cars raw, loud, and with a manual, of course, but if it doesn't have a manual, it's got to have like a ridiculous amount of power. So like a C8 Z06 would help, but those are very expensive. And talking to the dealership yesterday, they don't take any deposits. That's when I asked them, okay, well, how about the ZR1? And I don't think they have a waiting list for a ZR1 yet. So I could potentially see myself in a ZR1 in a couple of years. If not a C8, if I don't get another C8, I still do want a sports car. If there's one car that I could see myself driving that has the things that I'm looking for, so manual, it's got to be a V8 at least. It's got to be loud, and it has to have like this raw driving experience. I want like a pure driving car. And so I looked at some Dodge Vipers, and I could really see myself maybe purchasing one in the next couple of years. Something about that Viper, it kind of has that personality of like my Charger Hellcat. It's just a raw car, right? That's what I really love. I love those cars that are just like raw, right? And the Dodge Viper would be, I think, perfect for that. So while the market is fairly good for used Corvettes, I feel like the used market for C8 Corvettes is starting to come down. And I just want to kind of summarize that this car is absolutely fantastic. It's a great car. If you're fortunate enough to buy this car, especially at MSRP, and that's the other thing, it's kind of crazy. These cars used is more expensive than new, right? So we're just kind of waiting for the market to correct itself. I could potentially sell this car right now for above MSRP, which I paid for 2 years ago. All right, guys, well, that's going to do it for this one. So that was my thoughts on my 2021 C8 Corvette, which I've had the privilege of owning for the past couple of years, and it's a fantastic car. And if you're fortunate enough to own one, congrats. If you're looking for a C8 Corvette, have some patience. I'm pretty sure the price for used Corvettes will be coming down and the market will reverse itself. That's going to do it for this one, guys. So those were my thoughts on my 2021 C8 Corvette, which I've had the privilege of owning for the past 2 years. It's been a great car. No problems, no issues with this car. I've absolutely enjoyed owning and driving this car. And I hope you guys enjoyed that video, and I'll talk to you guys next time. Okay, take care. We'll see you next time. Bye.